Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Jesus said, I give you a new commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. A new commandment. But Jesus knows well that religion in particular doesn't often cope with newness very well. Some of us may value our tradition as much as we love God, or maybe even more so. Consider, as they are called, the 7 last words of the church, or sometimes these could be seen as the motto of the church. So it is, we have never done it that way before. In other words, newness doesn't work around here, or newness doesn't work in religion. For example, I want you to pick up that red book in front of you. Go ahead, Jeff. Pick up that red book in front of you. You do remember that this is actually the Book of Common Prayer. We don't use it so much anymore, at least not directly, because everything in the Book of Common Prayer is contained in our order of service for pretty much all of our liturgies. Do you realize that this has been our prayer book since 1979? This is almost 40 years now. I think it's only been about 8 years since we stopped calling it the new prayer book. Finally. Well, yeah, we don't tolerate new very well. Consider the introduction of the first Book of Common Prayer in England. The Church of England, as well as church law, said that the new prayer book must be used on Pentecost Sunday, June 9th, that year, 1549. Prior to this, all the worship has been done, particularly the Mass, all the worship is done in Latin. But virtually no churchgoers, and very few of the priests, actually knew Latin. The priests maybe would recite it, but most of them didn't know it. So with Latin in, the new prayer book was moving into English. Now, by Monday morning, we're talking the next day, by Monday morning there was virtually an open revolt against the government that erupted around the country in many places. Give us back our Latin Mass, the protesters were saying. Fortunately, the new way prevailed, and books of common prayer have become very much a cherished Anglican tradition. Same way with the commissioning of the venerable King James Bible. That took place in the year 1604, and the first edition appeared in 1611. Once again, religion, as Jesus very well knows, doesn't do newness very well. In the year 1604 was not a world like our world where seeds of change, innovation, are consciously cultivated and celebrated. Their world moved at a much slower pace where continuity was prized over change. And yet, this new endeavor was to be a radical translation, and not without its political implications either. You see, the Puritans wanted their theology and their church polity reflected in the new translation. They said, in their humble opinion, of course, that the Church of England should look more like the Presbyterian Church in Scotland. You know, just no bishops, none of that kind of stuff. Fortunately, King James would have none of it. He said, no bishop, no king. Now get to work in the way that I asked you. He insisted that the translation use familiar terms and names to be readable in the language of the day. And it was radically new. Today, though, many English speakers see this once new Bible is held to be the greatest English translation of all time. So, what Jesus says today, he says, he's doing a new thing. I give you a new commandment that you love one another. New. There's that new thing again. As religion and as an institution, we have to remember that Jesus is all about changing a religion and changing a culture. Once, when he was asked, what is the greatest of all commandments? That Jesus didn't pick one of the 10 great commandments. He didn't pick any one of the 640 commandments that kind of morphed out of the Ten Commandments as the greatest. No, what Jesus did was self-select and combine all of that, according to him, into what is now known as the Great Commandment. Love God with all your heart, mind, soul, body, and strength. Love your neighbor. Love yourself. And now, gathered with his disciples, he says, I give you a new commandment, that you love one another just as I have loved you. Now, this may be the simplest, clearest, but hardest commandment of all. So hard will it be to live this new way, as Jesus calls it new. Love one another. Now, newness in that sense it's not a matter of never hearing such words as these before. It is the way that love is to be lived that becomes something new. Jesus said, love one another in the way that I have loved you. Give yourself to others completely, totally, without reservation in the name of God, even sacrificially. Turn your heart inside out for another. It is new, and it is hard, but it is worth it if we are to change the world. And Jesus is all about change. Now, as you heard me start last week, the professing Christians should be ashamed of the way that we have treated each other at periods throughout history. We turn the gospel message into a weapon that supports our own various prejudices. Such behavior that is clearly antithetical to the way of Jesus. Because Jesus says clearly, love one another, a new commandment. It is time to change and to do something new. Jesus himself says so. But we know, as a community of faith, we know that it is so hard to change. Even Peter heard Jesus speak these words, and now Peter is in a place where he has to decide how he is going to bring these words to life. At least that's how he tries to explain the vision that he had. You heard the story of Peter's vision in the first lesson that was read. A little background is that Peter is being criticized for associating with those who aren't Jewish. He's been hanging out with those who think, believe, act differently. And so he tells the others about his vision. He says, I was over in Joppa, and I was praying, and I was in a trance, and I saw a vision. And as Peter tries to explain it, he says, the vision is really about this, is that God is changing the rules. This is new. God is changing the rules. No longer are there to be outsiders in the way of Jesus. What was once excluded, the vision says, is now to be included. Another little bit of background here is that the Jewish people weren't allowed to eat certain foods, and followers of Jesus are now no longer to be restricted in this way. The Jewish people are not allowed to associate with certain people, non-Jews or Gentiles. Followers of Jesus are allowed to embrace one and all. Indeed, they are moved to include one and all. Much has changed here at St. Peter's in the last 3 years, wouldn't you say? Circumstances have forced us to look at each other in a new way. There's that word. Forced to look at each other in a new way. We know what we once were, and we know that we can never go back that way again. To be able to live through conflict, to be able to live through tragedy, and somehow become something better. That, my friends, is a gift of God. The disciples know something of this. The disciples lived through the tragedy of the cross and feel that they have lost Jesus. But they meet him later in a new way called resurrection. And that, too, is a gift of God. In this place, we have learned that we don't have to fear change, and we don't have to fear each other. For it is in Jesus that we learn that we can love one another. And we can actually celebrate that new reality. The way of Jesus is the way of God. That's what he tried to live and proclaim. And the way of Jesus is also the way of love. It has been said that God's love is like the water we drink. God's love is like the air that we breathe, the food that we eat. In other words, we can't live without it. And you can't live without love. We can't live without each other. In God's name.
Amen.